And welcome to Mental Health Monday. I am Bryon, and that's the lovely Anna right to the side of me here. Last week we touched upon fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and how much fun and not fun that could be. And what we usually do here every week is just trying to have discussions about topics, definitions, and words, and everything that has to do with mental health to help you and help us learn as we go. Because the more you know, the better your chances are of having better mental, and that is our goal, is to help. And with talking about last week's subject of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, this week we're going to be talking mostly about responses, what that looks like for each person. Everybody's different. That's the main thing about this podcast. We talk about a lot of things, and we want to make sure you know what we're talking about, but also with words and things, and everybody's different, and we want to make sure that we say that at the beginning, or at least say that. So when we're saying this is how we react, this is just our personal experience that maybe you could relate to or take into your own account and relate it to however you can. This week, just going to be talking mostly about, what does regulation mean, and everything that we try to do to get ourselves back to what we would call a normal state. Normal state is obviously, there is no normal, so it's a tough word for me to say, but wherever we feel the best as a regulation standpoint. So I'm going to throw it over to you, and maybe you can just give a better or a more in-depth explanation or where we're headed with this conversation.
Oh, yeah. So, regulation is not really about forcing yourself to calm down because that can often have the adverse effect, right? But it's really about just helping your body realize that it's okay, sending signals of safety to your body so that way you can, physically, mentally calm down. I know I've had panic attacks before. Bryon, have you?
Oh,
And
very much, yes. As a lot of people find out the hard way, I think is the easiest way to put that, is I found out what that was after having it maybe a couple times, and then really grasping what it was maybe many times. So, yes, absolutely. You can continue talking about that, but yes, definitely panic attacks definitely do happen.
yeah, yeah, and it can come from a lot of different things. And as we go through our life, some things that you'll figure out if you do have had panic attacks, or you do, that it can be triggered by some of the same things regularly, which is something to notate and be cognizant of, and you can work through that. And then sometimes it also may be triggered by something completely new, and that's where having some tools that have worked for you and that seem to work, or a combination thereof, really help to see, okay, what can I do if either a panic attack or just a very anxious moment comes on, so that way we can get through it and move on with our day and our life. But this episode is really to connect what we spoke about in the last one, as far as like different feelings that we have in our body, such as a tight chest, racing thoughts, brain fog, with fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and seeing, okay, what tools do we have available, and those can be a variety of different things, like you were saying, as far as how to apply it and what works best for you in each scenario.
Yeah, I think as we stated in the last episode, and I definitely tried to say a bunch of times just so that people know, all the things that we try to advise you to do and things that are healthy to do aren't easy to do, and they're not something that you get right away. You can't just go, okay, I had a bad day, I'm gonna start journaling, when you've never journaled in your whole life. I think part of this is just to know that your normal reactions of any of the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is something that happens to all of us, and including myself and Anna, where we as we grow and as we learn more and as we apply these things, it becomes a lot easier to get to the things that we suggest. And trust me, it's taken me plenty of years to get to a good place to be able to do the things that I can do or see and understand, but we'll get there. And that's why this is important to talk about because there is a base level, and just as anything, you grow a learning which helps you push things forward. So um, recognizing what you're feeling, and what's pushing you there. Biggest thing with one of the biggest things, I won't say the biggest things, but one of the main things with any sort of situation like this, you must go through it instead of around it. So suppressing emotions, suppressing feelings is definitely the wrong way to go about it. But we're guilty as charged a million times over, and you know the best practice is to not have to deal with it later. If you push it out and you go through it now, you deal with it now rather than later when it comes at a time where maybe the sky's falling and then that falls as well. So it's better to go through it to get it out of your way, to let it have less blockage, because I think a lot of what we'll talk about as we move forward through this whole conversations, as we get through terms and things that people will understand, is that one of the biggest things is to go through this, feel the feelings, and so you don't have to feel them later. I mean, that's a really simple way of putting it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's easier, it's not easy, but it's easier to practice these things in smaller situations versus larger ones, you know? So, maybe if you are having like if you have an upcoming presentation at work, or you have a challenging conversation coming up with somebody, a whole lot better to practice in smaller kinds of situations or medium situations than like that than if something catastrophic happens in your life. So then you are a little bit better prepared with those tools, as far as feeling those feelings, and not just saying to your body, "Oh, just relax." That's like probably one of the hardest things. It's like, no, your body just starts to tighten up even more sometimes when you say just relax. And to build up that window of tolerance too, is, because we're always facing all kinds of different things that are thrown at us in everyday life. And the more that we encounter different scenarios and we learn that, we tell our bodies that, hey, we're safe in this situation. We practice these tools that builds that window of tolerance, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So that way you can continue to feel better in types of situations like that, or just less frantic, anxious.
and if you're anybody like us, you know those feelings all too well. So
Absolutely.
we'll go through some of these emotions as we go through it, and just a couple that run through fight and flight, just feelings in general that are pretty typical towards that, which would definitely be anxiety, anger, urgency, and racing thoughts, which is definitely something that I felt all of them, still continue to feel all of those things. I think anxiety is one of the key factors in how I have to manage my emotions for sure. Anger was something that I probably felt early on before getting into this journey and really understanding what I was angry about, which is definitely something that we'll get into. But it's also just something that you have to understand what you're feeling, and this is just kind of giving you a brief words to put into the square of what you're trying to figure out. What is going on, and it helps to acknowledge that, hey, I get angry, and then, hey, that's a normal emotion to feel. Everybody feels that way. As much as I'm the calm, cool, collected guy, always it is. There's always anger somewhere. I mean, I've seen it everywhere. But anxiety is always high for me. It's something that I have to work on constantly. Urgency is definitely something that, again, I fit right into this category just because, at first and a lot of the time, I just want to fix things real quick, just like easy fix. Let's end this. I don't want to extend it. Racing thoughts took a lot of years of my life to find out that I have OCD relating to racing thoughts, that really put a lot of things into perspective, and has helped me out tremendous a bit to understand that when I think about things and then I just go down rabbit holes, but I'm also just like constantly thinking and having running thoughts that are just, when you're angry, upset, anxiety, all that stuff, it's never good thoughts. So it just races and then kind of makes your mind convinced of things and everything else. And to find out that I had OCD with that has really helped me, because just like we're trying to explain here, is the whole, the more you know, the more you learn, and the more you can help yourself by understanding what your body and what your mind does to you during conflict or confrontation. So, and then we got freeze and shutdown, which is something that I do sometimes. Shutdown is one where I just can't speak. Some people feel numb, like numbness, fingers, hands, fatigue. I mean, a lot of people will just sleep it off, and that is something that is healthy, but you also have to understand that it's just like you got to eat your vegetables before you eat ice cream. You know what I mean? You got to feel your feels before you can rest it off, instead of just resting it off and hopefully it goes away. So, and disconnection with that as well is just same thing, just trying to disconnect it all and just say fuck it. But there's a lot of things that we can do within those of alternates, or having those feelings and learning how to be better about approaching that, or because a lot of these things can be short instead of long, in the sense of how long you feel these things when you start to regulate these things and feel better about them. So I don't know if you want to talk about grounded states. That might be some useful information for people feeling, where can
Yeah.
they get to, where would they feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. Before I hop into that though, I love what you just said as far as like you can really determine how long you stay or don't in each of those states. With numbness, fatigue, disconnection, which is connected to freeze and shutdown, that could also include, numbing with substances. It can include just overall feeling fatigue, like if you are burnt out at work or if you're burnt out on a combination of things compounding, that can cause that freeze or that shutdown where your body just it compounds over time, and then your body just says, no, I need to have some time. And yes, that is important to have that, but then you also have to bring yourself out of that, which can be hard at times, depending upon you and your life and everything else. And so really trying to see, okay, and I think one thing that really helps with me at least too, is staying curious about myself. Kind of like I'm learning a person, I'm learning about a person, I'm learning about myself that way too. And just saying, okay, I'm feeling this. What does it mean? Instead of automatically thinking, oh, it means this. Thinking of the worst case scenario. It's so easy for us to default to that worst case scenario or scenarios and then to go down that rabbit hole, like you're saying. But, really pausing and trying to take a moment to see, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Is this really the case? Probably not. And just staying curious about yourself and what you're thinking and feeling, I think helps for me. And for any getting into a more regulated state, the different practices such as grounding, being present in the moment instead of in your head, and also in your body, but really to notice the things around you. And we'll talk about, just some different tools coming up here next. So that helps to, really bring kind of like, I don't know, I kind of see it like a tunnel where I am seeing, kind of spinning things, or I can view things just as a tunnel vision, but noticing and taking the concerning effort to notice different things around me, how they look, how they smell, touch, using all the different senses, that kind of brings me back from that dreamlike state to the present moment and helps me realize, oh, you can control this. It's fine. This is where you're at, and this is where we can go from here.
Yeah, beautifully said. I mean, I think recognizing and building off of that is definitely the way to go about all of this, to kind of realize of ways to deal with this stuff. And we're here to tell you that, like, those are temporary fixes that always bite you in the ass at the end of it. And it's not saying that I don't enjoy a drink, I don't do whatever, but it's all part of, you know how you treat it and how you use it for. And I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to know that rather than just subconsciously doing things. But that's how we learn, and we learn about ourselves. And seriously, is just like one of the biggest things. It's what we'll always say, and I always say, at the end of the day, you're gonna find the one thing that's still there at the end of the day, and that's yourself. So if you're really gonna find out how to help your mental health, is really just helping discover yourself a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of it, because you got to find out a lot of things, and it starts to open up Pandora's box, but in the best way, because then the things that you've been pushing aside or dealing with early in life, later in life, or just not knowing that you're kind of pushing away, is what we really are trying to help you gather those notes and figure out what homework you can do on yourself to realize that, like, the things that you've pushed off to the side that you really got to go through and feel as part of the process on, things won't feel so heavy because you won't have things that will push you in the direction of total chaos and meltdown, which is something that we all know way too well. And it feels good to not have that nuclear siren going off all the time, no matter if it's a big deal or a small deal. It always seems to be going off when you're not fixing the things you need to fix. So with that
Yeah.
in mind, let's start talking about things that we can do to help ourselves regulate so that we're not thinking in destruction mode or sirens going off, because a lot of these reactions are, just your body trying to protect yourself, so they're gonna sound the alarms. And when there is some ways that we can regulate ourselves in moments to be present, and just like what you talked about being present, to kind of pull yourself back. And we got breathing. Breathing is something that we'll talk a little bit about today, but I think in the future episodes we'll talk about, breathing. Breathing's a big thing. So a lot of people, longer inhales, exhales. They say inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. Trust me when I do it. Sometimes I just do this during the day regularly to kind of, it helps. It really just generally helps, gets me in, a little bit more present, because I have to slow down. A lot of people, that's what I talk about all the time, is we are always on the go. We are always a rush as a human race. So once we can slow it down, even for that 10 seconds that we're doing it, just remember, breathe in. Breathe in for 4, exhale for 6, and make sure you actually do the 10 seconds of that, and make sure you're breathing all the way out and giving it a full sigh of relief when it's coming out, because, you know, out with the bad. You know what I mean? Take it all in
Yeah.
and then release it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different tools and stuff that you can use, and like with a lot of these things too, there are coaches available too. So if you are, you may try several different things on your own. I know I have, and I'm still trying to find a sweet spot for different things. But there's also great, breathwork coaches and instructors and classes and things that you can take, as well as physical tools. So like you're talking about breathing. One thing that I got that I haven't quite taken to, but it does help as far as if I feel anxious, is it looks kind of like a little whistle, like a dog whistle.
yeah,
This one
yeah.
that can be
I've
used
seen
as a
those before.
necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't quite help with, at least it hasn't, from what some people say it helps them to help stop smoking or vaping, but it helps to kind of slow your breath. So, breathing in, and that really just helps to do that through a small device that is similar, that mimics that type of device. Because really, when a lot of times smoking, vaping, it's our way to catch a breath, get some fresh air sometimes,
Yep.
and this kind of along those same lines helps to mimic that motion.
Yeah, I think it's the shortness of not a lot of room for the air to go, so you have to concentrate on getting the breath back to you know, what we're trying to accomplish is to breathe normal or breathe better, and that gives it a little bit harder of a challenge, but it gets your mind to be focused. I think a lot of the things that we'll talk about is just getting your mind back to focusing, realizing that the 10 level of how intense something might be, we can turn down that knob just easily by just trying to reset, you know. That's one thing that I'm lucky enough to do that I wasn't able to do before a million times over is kind of just okay, and then give myself grace to kind of figure out what's going on in the moment rather than reacting right away and fighting and flighting and freezing or fawning, any of those things. I could have done any single one of those things, but I'm not saying I'm not guilty of doing those things from time to time, but my ratio of what I tend to do is just kind of take a couple deep breaths, try to listen to what's being said in the confrontation and what my body's trying to tell me. And it's about regulating yourself to be able to listen. And trust me, if you're fighting, if you're yelling, you're screaming, it's you're not thinking clearly and you're not listening. So with that as well, a good thing you said was get some fresh air. Movement always helps. If you're in a confrontation where you can say, "Hey, I'm gonna go walk around the block, come back to this," but trust me, the one thing you don't
Yeah.
want to do is spend that 10-minute walk mad or thinking about that situation. What you should be
Hmm.
doing is trying to regulate and trying to get
Hmm.
yourself back to calmer than you were when you left. That is the point of regulating yourself, is to come back to the situation better. Exercise, physical movement is a lot of people deal with mental health in this way. It's very healthy, obviously, to get your body moving, but it's also making your focus different. It's concentrating. You have to
Hmm.
concentrate outside of what's your brain can do. And sometimes you can do both, and it's very taxing. But a lot of the time, it does work wonders to be able to get some movement in your body, do a stupid dance, is like I like to say, do a dance, you know, do the MC Hammer dance, shake your body, just shake your limbs. Sometimes just things that we don't do on the normal that will shake our brain, and then we'll be like, wow, that was stupid. But at the same time, wow, that was stupid is way more better for the soul and for the brain than I'm gonna fucking lose it. So if you're gonna
Yeah.
lose it, maybe just jiggle out some arms and roll your head around or act like you're on fire, whatever you got to do. You just got to move the body, get some exercise. It's all about putting yourself in a place to be able to feel not intense. I think that's a good way to put it, like to feel not intense. These are ways to get yourself out of the intense feelings to really register what's going on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And even like if you aren't experiencing intense feelings, to just, like you said, help you refocus. One of the things I love that you guys do at work is you go and you take walks around the building.
oh,
And
every day,
that,
yep.
helps to reset and you get around others, you get some fresh air and that and at my one of my two little nephews' school, one of the things that they have is a morning run club. So anybody who wants to come and participate, you can just run around the little track that they have there, and that helps the students to kind of get their wiggles out early on in the morning,
Yeah,
so
it's
to get
really
those
smart.
wiggles out before classes start. And they have other different activities for them to do throughout, any school day, as is, with any younger kids, so that way they can get some movement to their body and just reset their brain and focus in so they're not, wiggling around in their chairs. And I've noticed that helps me a whole lot too, to get my wiggles out at work and whatnot. So that way I can sit down and refocus on what it is I need to do.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's just smart. There's nothing more to that than that's just smart. Yeah, I mean, God, I probably, with my ADHD and just my brain as a kid, that probably would have helped, you know, me getting in trouble for not sitting still. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, reality, everybody should have gym class right out in the first of the morning. I think that would help everyone, including adults.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we can do to help get ourselves to feel to shake off some of that, the vibes that we have is a good way to put it too. Just shake off the vibes to kind of bring ourselves back to what we feel like is a normal way to approach whatever situation comes at us. Um,
Yeah.
we also have co-regulation, which is just talking with a safe person. This is me and Anna's safe space, but luckily we have a group outside of this that is a very safe space that it's lucky not a lot of people have. But in trusting people, I talk about this with a lot of people a lot of the time, just because it's something I've had to learn through therapy is to be able to drive your ship appropriately. You need to build your crew instead of try to do everything yourself. And finding people you can trust and have conversations with, open and honestly, will help tremendously. I promise you. Even a hug. I mean, just the touch of somebody else. It doesn't have to be weird. It has to be consensual, obviously. I'll say that with a underlining thing. But just sometimes you just need a hug. Sometimes people don't need to say anything. You can just tell they need a hug, embrace the hug, just let them deal with it how they are. But that helps a lot. And sometimes you don't even know how much a hug will mean just to you. And then sometimes one of the best times is just sitting there quietly with somebody. Maybe some music playing. Don't need to speak words because then your mind's doing the speaking, and you can kind of put yourself in a place with a calming presence around you that if you need to talk, you'd be able to talk. But the quiet is nice. I think underestimation of quiet and silence is a big thing that I've had to learn with how to deal with things. I One of my big examples that I found out through therapy, of course, and just learning about myself, but like wake up in the morning, music, get in my car to go to work, music, go to work all day, music, podcasts, get out of work, go home, music, movies, TV shows, fall asleep to a TV show, wake up, repeat. And then I started to find, hey, silence is great. Started taking car rides with no music, nothing, just embracing the
Mhm.
quiet nature, letting my mind talk instead of trying to mute that with noise. Um,
Yeah.
there's beauty in that. So we
Yeah.
do a lot of these things incoherently. Like, I mean, I did that for a lot of my life, not even realizing that. It's probably better that my body shuts down every once in a while, and the voices don't need to be silenced. A lot of the time they just need to be heard, and then they can go away. It's part of the feeling it rather than going around it. And it's really just about meeting it head on a lot of the time, and it's really hard to do, but it's a really almost simple minded thing, just a really hard thing to do. So
Yeah. 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 I just got the visual of like summertime where it's nice outside and it's not, yeah, nighttime and the windows down and you could just hear, the crickets as you're driving by and getting the summer smells. That's very peaceful. And you don't necessarily need to have music on at that time. You're getting all those peaceful sounds and feels. You're taking that in. And that can definitely help. Like just taking a car ride out in the country, away from folks. That can obviously, get to a point where you can safely drive a car, but
yeah,
but
yeah, you can't
yeah.
be daydreaming.
And yeah, co-regulation, that's one of the things too. And I was actually talking to a friend, was it last year? She was having a lot of panic attacks. And one of the things that now I don't have as many panic attacks as I used to, or they just kind of come on sporadically. But I know that having a game plan of different things, like a toolbox of different things in a game plan, and having people around you, if you do have people around you that you feel comfortable doing this with. I know one thing that has really helped for me is having a strong embrace and to synchronize our breaths. So, having that person and, communicating about this first, say, hey, if I get into this state, can you, just give me like a big bear hug and just help me breathe in and then breathe out, just to calm that breath down and having that synchronicity between hearts and heartbeats and breath. It's like honestly like being in the womb again. It really helps. And that's where, having, babies, small children, having that when they're trying to calm down, when they're feeling anxious, they're throwing a fit along those lines. If you can get them to the point where you can calm them down and they're comfortable with that, that's great for small children.
And at the end of the day, we are all just small children. And what you'll find
Really?
out as you get into your journey that all you're really doing is telling your little kid self you're okay, because a
Yeah.
lot of the time what we find out is what we pushed away and didn't really face as a kid because we didn't know how to. That we're okay now, and even then, we just kind of get through it to be okay in the future, and it really does open up a lot of doors, and you find out a lot of things. So yeah, I think
Mhm.
the kid, the womb, I think that's what we strive for in life, is to be nurtured and accepted and seen. And I think it's a beautiful thing when humans can just give even a slice of that through a hug, through some kind of contact, or just being there for somebody, because it truly does help. And I know in a world where masculinity and femininity and everything else is real high, and there's rules and there's regulations and there's a lot of things, but at the end of the day, when it's a really nice and meaningful thing to get some kind of interaction that is like that, is very important. And a lot of that shit you have to start to realize doesn't matter when we're just trying to help. It's not a, I
Yeah.
mean, some people are weird and there's weird situations, but there's really a lot of room for love in this world, and there's a lot of rules and regulations on that, obviously, but for a good reason. But there should be a lot more embracing, just to try to show people that it's okay to love and it's okay to help people, because who cares what it does for you at the end of the day, but you'll realize that it does help you at the end of the day by giving other people some kind of emotion or love, in a sense of accepting, because once you accept other people, it does feel good for yourself to see them be accepted, because you're doing something positive. And I think, there's a lot of different people, so a lot of different things and a lot of different ways people take that and manipulate that. But the real reality of that is we need all the love that we can really gather, because it's very
Yeah.
important in this world today, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And building those relationships with folks, and that takes time and takes a level of comfort, but doing that so that way if you are if you do encounter and you start to go into one of these modes, that way if you have that level of comfort with them, then you have that person or people that you can go to when you are starting to, and you can communicate that. So like I know we've talked a lot about anxiety, but also too in when you feel like you're going into shutdown mode or freeze mode, and say have those trusted people say, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now, this is where I'm at, if I start to do this, can you do that? And have that game plan. And then okay, if I get a text message or a call from this person, it will help me do this. Or you have that communication to help bring you out of that mode. It's a two-way thing too. You have to respond to that and figure out what works best. But sometimes just having that person or people that will check up on you when you are in shutdown or freeze mode, that helps to kind of get you moving again and saying, okay, these people know me, they trust me, they're here for me. And it can kind of start getting that ball rolling internally to snap out of it. And like you're saying, having somebody sit with you and not say anything. I know one of the main things that oftentimes triggers me when I'm just overwhelmed completely with all the things in life is not necessarily asking how I'm doing, but just sitting there with me. You're seeing, okay, you're very overwhelmed. Can I just sit with you here for a little bit? And that helps a lot. It helps tremendously to kind of calm me down and then to kind of get me out of that frozen mode, the anxious frozen mode.
Yeah, I think just being in the presence of somebody that's willing to see you matters more than than words can really depict in that type of situation or scenario. I think we're always thinking, what benefit does this they get? What benefit do we get? But the real sense of the thing of, when it comes from a good place, it goes to a good reason, I guess, is a good way to put it. Just want to reiterate, it's just it is okay to sit in silence. It is okay to sit in loud music. It's all in whatever feels right to you and whatever place you can be in, because what we tend to find out through a lot of ways in life is we meet each other at different places, and different places as in different healed places or just different like visions or views of the world, everything else. So when sometimes when just sitting there with somebody and just getting to know you're okay emotionally just to sit there and they're okay just to sit there no matter where they are, it really is a growing thing for the both of you. I think whatever way you can use other people in a way that's positive for both of you is a very useful tool. Me and you talk weekly, and I think that's very important outside of my therapist and everything else that I do, because it's just like we're helping each other while trying to help others, and it's the way that we find ways to regulate and feel comfortable. And that's what
Yeah.
really what we're talking about today is just trying to recognize what our emotions are, what we're reacting to, what our
Mhm.
feelings are, and that those feelings are okay. And just as you learn yourself is how you learn to be able to tolerate those things better and not stay in them for longer. I think that was the big thing about today is just realize that what we do as we learn more and as we build ourselves up is to you realize who you are and what kind of reactions you have. And instead of having those, you're realizing those and you're thinking about those rather than having those emotions. And I think that's where I've benefited the most is knowing how I would normally react and knowing how what would why would that bother me, and you learn that, and then you just go, what kind of energy is that going to be if I just lose my shit? How many times
Yeah.
out of 10 did it not help? Oh, 10 out of 10? Yeah, exactly. So you start to learn yourself, you start to give yourself those equations of, yeah, so 9 out of 10 times you freaking out and yelling and screaming and running down the street, smoking 10 cigarettes at the same time to try to relax yourself. Those things don't work, but it's all trial and error. And I think it's just a big
Yeah.
thing to give yourself the room to have error. I think everybody at the end of the day doesn't like to admit it, but we are all imperfect, and
Yeah.
I'll forever be imperfect. And that's why this journey will always be not just something, okay, I feel better, it's all over. I'll be doing this till my last breath on trying to work on myself because it's worth it. Trust me, it's way worth it. So yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, yeah, because stuff is always going to happen. We're always going to come across like new challenges, new situations, different people. The whole, here on this earth, we're to learn and grow and expand and to experience different things. That's the good part. Some of those experiences may be good, some of them may not be so good. But we get the good and the bad and the ugly. But it's really, these different regulation practices help to calm the nervous system in the moment, but over time, like you're saying, they help to build up that window of tolerance and to really expand our capacity and make us more resilient, adaptable to whatever life throws at us. And kind of like, I don't know, I kind of see it like you're preparing for a show, like you're a band, you're preparing for a show. You have a pre-show ritual that you like to do, either individually as well as probably with a group. You still may feel like, I know I feel the pre-stage jitters before I take the stage, no matter what, no matter how many times I performed. But I have those rituals that I go through, and that's really just that preparation for me and letting my body know, hey, this is what we're doing. We're safe doing this. And it's that adrenaline rush. But really that in showing myself and having those practices and recognizing what it is, like you're saying, you recognize it and then you can act accordingly to how you even more you're building that capacity so that way you can feel more comfortable taking the stage than you would have been, say, at the very beginning before you'd ever done it before. You find out what works for you, and that builds that ritual and the level of tolerance that you have.
Yeah, I wish it was as easy as just doing it once and then, yeah, I know how it feels when everything's good. I mean, I would be the
Oh.
most amazing live drummer and I say disc golf player ever because I really, that is something that, I've gotten better with time and age, but, I never really had all of these practices to be able to figure things out in the sense of, oh, they say things are mental because it really is. The 100 million% is mental because all these things that includes music or anything that you get stressed out about doing at any point in life is something you've done a million times, and that's sometimes it just doesn't get easier, but sometimes you just work on it and it does get easier. As much as
Yeah,
that's why I say it's always ever going is this process because I've played on a stage for most of my life and still nervous every time and still find a way to fuck up in some kind of way. But knowing is half the battle. And then this last couple times that I've done it, just with the work I put in with my mental stuff, it helps. You know what I mean? You just gotta bring yourself back to reality and just know that like, oh, like this is what I do. There's a lot to that your brain doesn't let you do. So getting yourself in a
yeah,
place to be able to say, hey, this isn't so bad. Like we've been here before. And it takes time. Trust me, I'm still working on it. So
yeah, yeah. I like what you're saying there too, because in like say if you're a basketball player, you figure out like maybe you're shooting and each shot is not really going. It's every, you keep messing up, but every other time or most other times, like you're good. But then you start to get on a streak of just really messing things up. And then how do you get out of that, that mental state? You have like, yeah, that's where some of those tools, and that varies from person to person, sometimes it's going to be, say, a keyword or phrase that just you can use that will help, snap you back into reality, into the present moment, out of your head where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to keep messing up. I'm going to keep messing up because the body likes to stay in the state that it's in. The brain likes to stay in that state and recognizes that. So you have to kind of snap out of it like hypnosis. So there's different things that you could do in those kinds of situations. And that's where really just trying to utilize different tools depending upon what activity, what scenario. And that's something that yeah, like you're saying, we're always going to figure it out, and having others to support you and on in those different scenarios and goals is key. That's another person or people that can back you up and to help whenever you need it.
yeah, it's a big deal. To be honest with you, I think we deserve some happiness, we deserve some calmness, and we deserve to be able to think about things in a way that we can feel confident moving forward with it. I know we didn't get to touch on everything we wanted to today, but I think we got through a lot of good
Well,
things. Obviously, with our brains that we talk about quite a bit, we like to go on tangents, but a lot of it very important, very informational, and it's a very big thing. So it's really hard to touch on everything that we want to, and we will continue to discuss things and get into more depth when we can feel more comfortable with people understanding what we're saying. But a lot of it comes down to just feeling regularization. You know what I mean? Just like putting yourself in a space to feel like you can handle these things. And I think at first you're going to feel overwhelmed, but as you learn yourself and learn how your tendencies are, that's when you get your biggest tools to help yourself. And everybody's different in that way and what works for them. But a lot of it, they have tools for a reason because just as much as I don't like sayings that everybody says a lot of the time, a lot of them are true. You know, everybody says it's going to be okay. And when you're upset, nobody wants to hear that. But it's just like a saying like that is it's very true. And that's why people say it. And the tools are there because honestly, they're tried and true. And I know it. And I know you know it. I think they help in any
Mm-hmm.
sort of way. So what we can offer
Yeah.
you is just our own take on it and our own experiences and just try to be the most relatable we can be and the most honest we can be. So from us to you, we
Mm-hmm.
want you to feel safe and feel okay to make decisions and not make decisions out of a state that you're not necessarily thinking correctly, because we've all done it and we've all learned from it. And once you start to knock those out to where you're not making bad decisions on bad thoughts, you don't have so much to work through, because you're not making all the same mistakes to have to go through and fix those mistakes over time and time again. So clears up some
Yeah.
time. So if there's anything that's beneficial, clears up a lot of time that you're not, you know, reconciling all these mistakes that you made out of
Mhm.
feeling, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There's a lot to that. But is there any closing thoughts you'd like to say for this week? Maybe give them a teaser on what maybe we'll talk about next week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess one thing to add too is, love to hear what tools others are using because, there's a lot of different things that we can utilize. And the more that we share this information amongst ourselves, the more that we build that toolbox, that toolkit. And you never know when you may need that. And you can go back and say, oh, so and so suggested this. Let me try that. Who knows? It may work. And lo and behold, that may be the exact thing that you need in that moment. So, yeah, so next week we are going to build further on this to see how some of these show up in relationships and how we can utilize nervous system regulations and the different tools to help us communicate and interact with others better.
Which is not an easy thing, because all
Sometimes it's
relationships,
easier
no
to
matter
tell.
if it's, yeah, no matter if it's relationships that are romantic, work, or just having to be around people, relationships make it difficult because a lot of factors come into play. So I look forward to talking to you about that. Look forward to talking to everybody else about that. It's been a wonderful time. It's been a really good
Yeah.
one. As for me, I'm Bryon, and that is the lovely Anna, and we are Mental Health Monday, and we appreciate you being here. So we'll see you on the next time.
I take care.